It's going to be tough to top.
I know. So did you bring a movie with you?
I did. I'm a chemical engineer, recovered too, so that was hitting home.
So Kevin Lyons, he's CEO and co-founder of a company called FlashVote. And my job here is to make the problem statement, and everybody here already knows the problem, is that we get a lot of data when there's new housing proposals. You know how many vehicles, miles it will generate, and et cetera. But we don't really know how a community feels about a project. There are 50 people in the room, and they all hate it. Are they just the tip of the iceberg, or they just it, and everybody else will support it? And you go on to Facebook and the Facebook page, and everybody seems to be against it there, but there's a bunch of cranks on Facebook, and you do a Survey Monkey, and it turns out the Survey Monkey gets captured by a certain faction and starts sharing it with their supporters, and it doesn't give you good data. And all these decisions we make about land use and housing are really hard decisions. And we thought about this at GPCOG. How can we help our member communities make better decisions? So we did an RFP, asked a number of companies to submit proposals, and we're looking not for the big, expensive $50,000 survey. We're looking for something less expensive that can give a council or select board a sort of a quick vibe check on how a community feels about a certain issue. And we selected FlashVote, and we've negotiated a group discount for all the members of GPCOG and also PAX communities. And we think this can make a big difference in the housing discussion, because it will allow the people who aren't in the room, the working mothers who don't have time to go to a council meeting, young people who aren't really represented all at these meetings, to have a voice. And I've asked Kevin to come here to explain how FlashVote works. So could you help people understand this?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks for that intro. So the simplest way to think about it, we're all deeply, intimately familiar with local government and the feedback we get. And I'm sure we even have nicknames for certain groups of people in town that we don't have to share now, but I collect them. So if you want to know the best I've ever heard, find me at the reception. Just to play around here, and I know we're the last group, so let's make it a little fun. Let's throw out a number. Think about all the input that Tom described. Social media, Survey Monkey, meetings, emails, right? All these things that we experience in the real world. And I've been a public official for 12 years, so I can, hate myself once a month for 3 hours. How often do we think the input that we get from this traditional engagement is a good match for what the whole community thinks? Yeah, okay. So someone throw out a percentage who's feeling brave. Go ahead, just throw one out. We're going to do over-under now that I live in Nevada. I'm a New Englander, but I moved. 10%. All right, what was there another one here? 23. So we got 10 and 23%. Who's got over 23%? All right, let's see a hand. Good, thank you. Anyone got under 23% for that? Okay, more hands there. So the consensus in the room is like, it's not very good, right? And I'll actually share with you that when we got the 300-ish surveys, we had this question. I was teaching a little class on this, and someone said, well, what is the percentage? And so we said, oh my God, we might be the only people on earth actually able to measure this right now. So we looked at our first 300 scientific surveys. We do scientific panel surveys, which is now replaced for the national firms, how you used to do the random phone calls that no one picks up. And we found that it was a match about 5% of the time. That means the same side on an issue and the same amount, like the same percentage, pretty close. We then found that another 25% of the time, you had a very small group that felt a lot bigger than it was, but not enough to be a majority of the sentiment, right? So actually, either one of those answers is really good, really close. What am I leaving out? Well, now there's 70% of the time that the input you get, the sentiment that you experience, what you believe the community thinks because you're human and you're paying attention, is the opposite of what your community actually wants, thinks, does. So think about the challenge that creates. And by the way, I know there's elected officials here. When we ask elected officials, the number they guess is usually not that low. They actually usually guess above 50%. But I'll tell you, the two 10-term mayors I've met, way below that. They said ignore the noise was their secret to success. And what I mean by that is if you actually just heard all that input and said, thank you all for coming tonight, you're loud and clear against this, so we will be moving forward. Right? Sounds hard, but you'd be twice as good at decision making than if you listened to it and did what you heard. Just to put it in perspective. Flipping a coin would be better too. So that's the challenge that's out there, and that's a challenge we solve with FlashVote. Basically, we've made scientific surveys dramatically faster, cheaper, and more affordable by investing in technology and automation. And really the most important thing is the questions themselves. We now have a database. We've done over 900 different surveys all over North America for communities, and we can draw on that as well.
Have you had any experience with the housing issue and the NIMBY factor?
What's NIMBY mean? Yeah. Yeah, so one of our favorite big projects, this was in California. So you guys, I know you guys have a housing issue here. You know, median house price in Maine is about $400,000. You know what it is in California? $1,900,000 median cost of housing. So we were working with a county in California, Placer County, and they were working on their first ever strategic plan. So we heard a lot about infrastructure and things like that today. Good thing about California is they don't have a lot of infrastructure problems because they're building it all the time. Bad part about California, they have like as I think this was called, how good data beats bad politics. 30, 40 years of NIMBY piled on regulations, making it hard to build the obvious solution to housing, which is basically smaller and taller, right? Makes the units more affordable, as we heard earlier. So this community, this county was stuck in a NIMBY trap where they would have meetings and the NIMBYs would show up. And so they didn't have the support that they were looking for what they like to call attainable housing, you know, a range of housing. And so what we did with them was we built the panel of scientific, you know, regular people. So think about having hundreds or thousands, in their case, of regular people on call to give you input on any issue, not knowing what that topic's going to be. You can see how that's now very different, maybe the opposite of what you get at a meeting, where it's people who are super interested in the topic, find out about it from their friends, get organized, and then come strictly because of that topic. So that's why those numbers are so different that we talked about earlier, those percentages. So what we did is we did this panel, then we did a survey, and even the questions were a little bit better than what you usually see, because we asked, hey, how much do you agree or disagree with the following question? The range of housing should match the range of incomes. A very public-focused version of the question, not do I want a house next to me, you know, or do I want my neighbor to do something or not do something? And what we found was that there was overwhelming support for that. We then also asked, really head on, would you support or oppose removing barriers to building smaller and less expensive housing? And before I tell you the answer, I'm going to give you one more tip on this one more trick, which is we also looked at this by part of the county, and the most expensive high-end part of the county versus the lower-end parts of the county. Anyone got a guess on where the NIMBY noise was the loudest? Lower end over here, yeah? Higher end? Yeah. Yeah, most people guess higher end, but it can be the lower end sometimes. Depends how you're doing it, because gentrification's a problem, right? But in general, like those edges are a thing. And so what we found was that in the area where they had been getting the most NIMBY, which in this case was the higher end area, that was where there was the most community support for eliminating the barriers to more affordable housing. It was a little bit shocking because, you know, we've all been in those meetings, but since then it's what we've seen over and over repeated, not just in California, but in other parts of the country.
I'd like to take the time to ask the audience if they have any questions about it. Do we have the microphone people ready? Do we have any questions from the audience? Back here. Go ahead.
So when you asked the question about smaller housing, houses, did you say smaller houses, 800-foot houses, or did you say bungalow? How did you phrase
We always
the
want to use
question?
words that people don't understand. That's really important in a survey if you want it to go your way. No, we actually, we are very specific about making sure it's the words we use going to people's heads. So on that survey, we didn't even get into that level of detail. We did do subsequent surveys with them where we got into what specific solutions to expanding the housing in the near term would be interesting. And that's where we got into ADUs. We did not say ADUs, right? So we got into different alternatives and explaining what those were. And ultimately, they actually passed their first ever strategic housing plan. And it had components including the density, more places you could build the housing that's taller and smaller, and bungalows and ADUs and other ADUs, I should say. Yeah.
One of the things that's happened is a lack of trust in government, and we feel it at the local level. And when I did the reference check on your company, I called Natick, Massachusetts, and there was a guy who's the communications director, and he did data for Staples before working for this municipality. And he took all your data and all those polls, and he created a web page on his website that had all the questions, had the results, had council actions as a result of the questions. Everything is public and transparent. So is there a relationship between better public opinion data, elected leaders, and reestablishing trust in a community?
Well, as you can imagine, yeah, it's huge. So if you see, there's like, we can call it kind of the doom loop you have now. Take well-intentioned elected officials, listening to who happens to come to the meetings. We're wired to do this, right? We care about people. We pay attention who's in front of them. And then maybe doing what their slice of the universe is telling them to do. So that's great for those 10 people at the meeting, the STP, right? But then you do that thing, and what does your community think most of the time? Well, what the hell are they doing? Right? Are these guys idiots? Why aren't they, I didn't get asked. Right? These are all real examples, and sometimes you see this in the comments. So yeah, so that's the problem to solve ultimately, and it's that the bad decisions are what's destroying the trust. And then when you can show them transparency in the process, so hey, you give them a decision receipt at the end of the day. Hey, here's why we did this. And yeah, I know there was noise at this meeting, but actually this is what the community prefers A to B, and here's why. Because you don't want to actually just ask that high level question that's really intuitive, like, hey, would you support more or less housing? It's really more about like, hey, what would be your concerns about more housing? And what would you be excited about? I know growth was mentioned today, for example. That's how you approach your growth. What are your concerns about growth? What are the benefits about growth that are appealing to you, right? And then you can start to try to optimize and maximize the good and minimize the bad. And then, generally you'll see support.
Man was listening very attentively.
Let me give you this.
Sure. As a town councilor, you get the people who show up, they're opposed to something. This common phrase that you hear is like, we have to preserve the character of the town. Based on your survey work, what are some of the words you can use to describe housing growth in a way that maybe is more amenable to people?
Boy, that's a really long topic, unfortunately. I will say that one of the words we avoid is affordable housing, because that's one that is you want something that goes into someone's head cleanly and without ambiguity. And affordable housing is tied to subsidies in a lot of cases and other things. And that's why we always are really simple, like, housing that costs less, right? Or that's taller and smaller. Visualize it. Oh, that's what we're talking about. Bungalow, people might think like thatched roof, cool little unit or something. What are we talking about? We're talking about like a studio, even that's a little fancy, like, yeah, typically a 400 square foot unit with a kitchen and a bathroom. They can visualize that, So, yeah, in general, just being as clear and honest as possible to get the best data out of their heads is how we think about it. And the data is what it is. What's interesting is when you do throw it out to the regular people, you'll be super refreshed to hear this. You hear normal, logical things back. Not the kind of things you're going to get on a Facebook where, one or two crazy people take it over and now no one's like, hey, do not engage, right? Like, stay away from that. And that also happens at, at the microphone at a meeting. So, yeah, great question.
Hi, my name is Laura Vanderlicht. I'm from the Maine Connectivity Authority, as we heard my lovely colleague speaking earlier. But I had a question for you. So, fellow survey research nerd. So, hello, sir. And so something that I'm wondering that how you've explored is you have this new great data that is more representative, it's clearer, it's easier to understand both for decision makers as well as community members. For a state like Maine and for a lot of our municipal governments that represent really small communities, don't have a lot of resources at their fingertips to be able to maybe access the great data. I'm wondering how you bridge that divide and how you go from great data to action and supporting the municipalities in between.
Well, if only there was an organization called GPCOG that wanted to help their communities get good data who are small. So I think that's the first step one is talk with them. And I think that's really the purpose of the very innovative approach they took to this. Thinking region-wide, not just thinking about what they might want to do with it, but how the communities could actually have their own panels and do their own surveys to their own, local residents.
Right. Yeah, we're hiring your company to get a sense of people's attitudes in the entire region of Greater Portland. And as more communities also hire your company in the region, it will just further strengthen our data.
Yeah, that's right. So what's a neat, without getting into the details too much, basically when we have participants, we actually geocode their address. So they might be in a small town, but they would then also be in the county and then also in the Greater Portland area. Each one of those could be interesting for different topics. You can imagine transportation, housing are some of the bigger ones, but backyard chickens might be only in your little town, right? So yeah, and we are a mission-driven company, and that's why we've made it so affordable, for as affordable as it can be. Multiple surveys per year for less than the cost of one traditional scientific survey.
So people at the council can ask multiple surveys during the year? How
Yeah,
many can
typical.
they ask?
So we throw out 6 as a number, but if you do 7, I will give you a high five. I've given some high fives. 2 to 5 a year is typical. Because, it's not a toy, and you're going to get some data that's going to be actionable. It's always designed to be actionable. And then you're going to do something with it, as Tom was explaining. Like Nate does.
And what's the turnaround? Let's say I have an agenda goes out, and I have a big meeting coming up. Can I put the survey out and get some results before the meeting?
You can, and it's very painful to do it that way. But we'd recommend earlier in the process, but we do, from launch to results is 48 hours. So it was designed with that exact scenario in mind from an engineering perspective. Like, wow, what if we could get data in the time between a notice and the meeting itself? But people will use it anywhere in a process, multiple points in a process, and they will also, sometimes we'll get same week, Monday, iterate on the survey, launch Wednesday, you got results Friday.
We have a question here.
Yeah.
Thanks. And this is a clarifying question because I might have missed it. So you're saying turnaround in 48 hours. How are you asking? Is it you said you're not calling, it's not phone banks. What is it? Because what comes up next for me is there's a huge prevalence of scam and fraud. So for you to get turnaround that fast and have a representation that is actually answering you and believing that it's true, I'm just trying to connect the dots there.
That's a great question. So because you're also a survey person, maybe? Yeah, like I'm familiar. By the way, we use the word survey to talk about like a questionnaire, and I do it too. It's not. A survey is actually a sample. So the question is, how do you get the sample and how do you get them to take the survey questionnaire? So yeah, if we did random calling or anything like that, it wouldn't work. So the modern way of doing this is what I mentioned, a survey panel. And the idea is there's 2 ways you can think about getting a good sample, a good survey of residents and what they think. Number 1 is the old style. Actually, go back to George Gallup. He randomly picked doors and sent people to talk to people. From there evolved the telephone call when telephones were very widespread. And you'd call, and actually 25 years ago, you could get a 60% response rate doing that. So you could knock something out in 48 hours. Nowadays, it's like 1%. So the modern approach that we pioneered, even ahead of, I think, all but Gallup in the national firms, is a scientific panel where you do that upfront effort to get regular people first. You get people to agree to take a survey without there being a survey. That makes it hard from a bait perspective, right? Because you don't have like, oh, I got a lot to say about, backyard chickens or recycling or whatever the issue is. You have to get them to opt in. 1 minute of their time is what we ended up at. So it took 18 months of user testing is the short answer. But if I say to you, hey, do you have 1 minute a month to help make your community better? Anyone say yes to that? Yeah, it's one less cat video. You can do it. You can do it. But it's the smallest possible ask, and then we make the most possible value for the residents and for the government in that minute. That's where the really tightly, easily understood, high-value questions in and out in a minute. You can get 5 of them, and then you're off and running. And we have all the demographics already built in from the sign-up process, so that makes the surveys shorter too.
But who do you piss off in this process?
Who do we piss off? Yeah, it's a great question. I love New England. I'm so glad to be back. So who do I'll even tell you who I like to piss off. Someone like somebody. I love it. My favorite call I've ever gotten. We do so people can participate by email, by text message, by phone call. And if they want to do phone only or text only, they call us. I still take all those calls. And I got a call from, it wasn't just one person, it was a group of people. And they were kind of, you could hear it over the phone. I was like, wow, there's a bunch of us here, and we're wondering why we should sign up for FlashVote. And I start, giving them, well, it's an opportunity, it's easy, da-da-da. And they're like, well, we already go to meetings. Ah, interesting. In other words, we already got a channel, and we're manipulating it, and we're doing just fine, thank you very much. They didn't sign up. I tried to talk them into it. Didn't work. Right? So those are the people that get pissed off.
They lost their power.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
They lost their power.
They lost their power, right? They lose the platform you give them. Just like social media. You give them, they've ended up giving them this platform where the craziest people can say whatever they want and they can't not be seen. So like I can tell you there's a lot of talk in Canada. People are actually shutting down the comment parts on their social media and returning it to more of an outbound method. These are all very real problems all over North America. Yeah. Great question.
Shakriya, this is Shakriya. I want to ask Shakriya from GPCOG. She does a lot of engagement work, right? And surveys. What's your take on this? Do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I'm very, very excited about this because I've been with JPCOG for about a year, and in that year, we've done 30 questions, and we've done 10 questions. So having the demographics, we do a lot of having, because we're PACs and we get transportation money and everything, we have to do a lot of engagement with underrepresented population, hence the demographics. So, like I said, I don't have a question, but I am so excited to be utilizing this and taking that demographic questions away and actually getting to the gut and glory of things. I'm like I said, I'm excited, and I'm hoping that this will make our engagement with everyone much easier. And those voices that are in the back, which is usually the underrepresented population, maybe, come forward.
A safe, welcoming on-ramp, right, for people to give their 1 minute in private, anonymously, all those things that make it as easy as possible is critical. Still harder, by the way, still the hard to reach. Have a whole talk on this, 20 minutes. But yeah, you make it as easy as possible for anyone who wants to give the input, and lo and behold, you'll actually get people giving input who you are not hearing from at all.
All right, so we're going to have a reception after this. You're going to stick around?
I'll be able to stick around for another 20 minutes or so. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk more. Of course.
Higher and smaller. What do you do with the kids? Stack bunk beds?
Taller and smaller. If it was up to them, yes. I don't know if you've ever seen a triple bunk bed, but the kids love it.
So thank you for coming out here from Nevada.
Thanks for having me out. Yeah. Go Patriots!